So 10 years ago, before selfies were selfies, people got their hands on this device for the very first time.
Apple co-founder Steve Jobs promised the iPhones would change the world. He was right.
You think?
Today, the smartphone dictates the way we talk, get our news, hopefully from CBSN. You can stream it on your phone, just so you know, and also dictates how we meet people.
Dun, 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 dun.
Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. And we are calling it iPhone.
I've just never seen anything that comes close to this for one single product ever.
All right, show me this baby.
So, did anybody call you from their new iPhone yet?
This is Amy. I think you butt dialed me.
I remember when people lined up to get that phone.
Let's see the new phone.
Awesome.
Do you want to peel the plastic off with me?
Really, me?
Apple said today that demand for its new iPhones has now exceeded the supply.
I appreciate that.
Somebody give me a phone.
This is life in color.
All right, I don't know how to work this.
It's just extraordinary.
CNET senior editor Jeff Bakalar is here with us. What's up?
How are you?
So take us back 10 years. I don't know if you were legal yet, but
I was still in high school.
Take us back 10 years. Did the iPhone exceed expectations?
I think it did ultimately. I think
not in the first.
Yeah, I think out of the gate it was sort of a lukewarm reception, but very quickly with the next iteration, and then obviously, here we are 10 years later.
Remember Edge?
Well, come on. It was funny, like, we were thinking about the most controversial things about the iPhone, and Edge was pretty much like the big problem when that thing first came out.
Right.
Do you remember it was 2G?
2G, dude.
On that phone.
And then and it was so slow.
It was really slow.
You couldn't, I mean, none of the things, that, you could get email, but it was not.
For me, it blew my mind.
Really?
Yeah, well, I was like flip phoning it. So I was here.
It is not a Canadian thing. No, it was.
We got the iPhone eventually in Canada, but I was already here. And I had never seen anything like it before. It was a completely different shape than many of the phones that we were already using. And the idea of a touch screen.
Right. And the fact that there was no physical keyboard.
Right.
It wasn't the first phone to do that, but it gets credit for sort of eliminating a physical keyboard and sort of, launching us into a generation of just complete touchscreen control. It only had, the button on the front, and obviously now it's a much different
What's
situation.
been the biggest add to the phone since the launch that you think has made this so ubiquitous?
Well, so just look at the launch phone. It didn't have GPS on it.
Right.
It had a really early version of Bluetooth that wasn't very functional, wasn't very versatile. No Siri.
No Siri.
I mean, even like the headphone jack was sort of recessed, and like not every. You remember, like not every headphone
could fit.
Because like if you had an L-shaped one, it would sometimes stick.
Yeah.
It was just
and if you put a cover on it, then you couldn't get any good reception. Remember, there was a whole thing. With
that was like antenna gate. That was a problem.
Antenna gate.
It was a thing.
Right.
People were upset.
You had to have AT&T. Like if you had a Verizon account, it was a whole thing.
There were a few bumps along the way, but when you look at that first iPhone, the one in 2007, it's so crazily small and thick.
And also, like the graphics, like when you look at it, it hurts your eyes.
There's like 11 pixels on that thing. It's ridiculous how tiny that phone is.
But don't you think the camera, the addition of the camera, is really what sort of transformed not just the phone,
but the first one didn't have a camera.
No, it did. The first one had a camera. It didn't have a flash.
Didn't have a flash.
And it also had obviously no way of like doing a selfie because there was no front-facing camera.
Right.
You just had to guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So at what point do you think that this really started to be? I mean, I'm trying to imagine the competition.
Sure.
There's a lot of competition now.
Without a doubt.
But back then, even with all the challenges that the phone presented to consumers, there wasn't really any other game in town.
There wasn't. And the thing that made the iPhone so popular was basically taking 3 products and combining them into one. And once that happened, people were like, well, I absolutely need this thing. I can't live without it. And it took a few years for other companies to sort of realize, like, oh, this is where we need to go too. So if you look at like the trajectory of mobile technology, it really kind of started with that first debut of the phone, and then obviously you had all these, other manufacturers lifting ideas from that and innovating in their own way. And obviously now it feels like Apple sort of perfects things and maybe isn't first to market with it, but sort of, you know, perfects them with quotes.
Do you think that they're still, does it feel to you as if the iPhone is still the dominant smartphone out there, or have others caught up?
It's not the most popular smartphone.
They kind of like go back and forth on a worldwide basis. Sometimes it's Android has a bit of a lead, and sometimes it's iOS. I mean, personally, for me, as in my opinion, I think the iPhone is great for people who just don't want to be bothered. They just want something that works.
Right.
I think for people who are want a little more customization and control and versatility and options. Let's be honest. If you have an Android phone, you're able to get a, you know, dozen different types of manufacturers' phones. Like there are plenty of companies out there that make a phone for Android.
Yeah.
Apple, you got to wait a year.
I feel like for me, because I was an early adopter of Apple products, I had the very first iPod when it came out, and I have I've had every iteration.
Is this
of
like
it.
I'm in the ecosystem? Is that where you're going?
Yeah, I was
with
going
that?
to say.
If we open up your kitchen drawer, are we going to see like a cemetery?
No, I have them displayed. I have them displayed because it's like, for me, like the iPhones are like phonographs. Like your grandfather had an old phonograph with the big horn,
one,
right? The 07,
it's
like
rough.
it looks like a thing that when young kids come and they go, "What? This is what an iPod was."
Yeah.
I sort of feel though, because you're in the ecosystem, it's hard to bust out of that.
I don't buy that anymore. I don't buy that anymore at all.
Really?
I think if you want to switch, to go back and forth, a lot of this stuff is cloud-based now.
Right.
It's easy to
How would I get
transfer
my
things
35,000 songs that I've had in...
Are we doing tech support right now?
No, if I had...
This is not what you have me on for, Vlad.
All my 35,000 songs, how would I get those into an Android device?
Well,
so wait.
Unlike a lot of other people, keep all their music in the cloud. So a lot of people use Spotify, streaming music services. You don't need that on your phone anymore. Did I just blow your mind?
But that's a technical argument as to why you don't technically need to do that.
Right.
But there's something sort of social, cultural about being part of an Apple family, even though we know that Android phones, at least I think now, are selling faster than the iPhone.
They're just as good.
There was a sort of a cultural revolution, I think, that came in with the iPhone.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, people, and a lot of that was perception and the psychology of it all, and the branding, really. I mean, if you had an iPhone, you're like, well, if I have this iPhone, it runs iTunes. I probably need a MacBook.
Right.
I probably need some sort of Mac device.
Yeah.
It's just not true anymore. And now you sort of have, you know, Apple going in a certain direction with the laptops they're making. They're really not designed for like the creative, you know, or at least they're trying to make that more of a point these days. It's tough. They really, you know, aren't, I don't think, able to sell the idea of you're locked into this ecosystem now. You have to have everything Apple. It's just not true anymore.
Well, except for me and Vlad,
That's
we're
right.
obviously
Don't
buying
worry.
into it.
After this, I'll get you set up. You'll be fine. We'll break the shackles.
Happy birthday, iPhone.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Jeff Bakalar, as always, my friend.
Of
Thank
course.
you.
Thank you.